A very good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to Who Feeds Bangalore, which is an exploration into different forces that shape how the city of Bengaluru eats. It's a participatory research project which fueled by strong doses of curiosity and collective community thinking and doing to get a clearer idea of the people who feed Bangalore. At Phytopia, as part of the Science Gallery Bangalore, we'll be diving into the city itself, exploring the relationship that the city has with its plants through a 2-day workshop that includes talks, conversations, and also a little bit of cooking and creating. Thanks for joining us on day one. This session is in collaboration with Bangalore Sustainability Forum, an inter-institutional collaborative initiative that aims to address issues relating to the long-term sustainability of urban and peri-urban landscapes. Before we get into the talk, a couple of housekeeping rules. Please keep your mic and video turned off and ask your questions in the chat section. Towards the end of the talk, I'll be asking your questions to the speaker for the time allocated for the Q&A. This session is also being recorded and is being live streamed to YouTube. And on the chat, you'll also find a link to a feedback form through which you can leave feedback for this session. And also please respond to the poll that is floating around there. So without further ado today, I'll introduce the guest for our next talk. Geetanjali Rajamani is the co-founder and chief operating officer at Farmazon, which is an agri-tech company focused on connecting farmers directly to consumers. She's also the founder and CEO of Green My Life, an urban gardening and landscaping company. And prior to this, she worked in the clinical research space for 12 years, handling large-scale pharma operations, and she has an MBA in international management. Technology is shaping the way we interact with food in many different ways today. And so today, Geetanjali will be telling us about how Farmazon works and why is it important to be closer to the plants that we eat. Without further ado, over to Geetanjali. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Anusha. Really looking forward to this. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all staying safe. So like Anusha said, today I want to talk to you a little bit more about where our food comes from, because our topic is all about who feeds Bangalore. And why is it important to know where it comes from, who grows it, and how we can, as responsible consumers, contribute to the whole process, right? So I would like to just share my screen. I have a few slides. So Anusha, I'll go ahead and share the screen then. So, this is how our typical supply chain of vegetables and fruits looks like, right? There are at least 4 to 5 intermediaries in the process. It's also very ad hoc and very complex in the sense that there is no set process or pattern that is always followed. And this is mainly also because we are a country of small farmers. Typically, the land holding size is about 1 acre to 2 acres. So the produce from all these farms is aggregated, sent to mandis, smaller mandis, auctioned off there, reaches bigger mandis, from whom the supermarkets, big retail stores, etc. take in their stuff. Right? So there's a complex mechanism at work here, which ensures that, say, if you want carrots in peak summer, it ensures that it comes in from Ooty or wherever it is that it's cold and it's growing there, and then it comes to your mandis and other markets and comes to your houses through supermarkets, right, or your thelawalas. So, and if you're talking about Bangalore, then it's the big mandis like your APMC, RMC, networks like Hopcoms, which are the hubs for these, which collect produce and then get it here. Now, because of this whole complex structure of this, what happens is that it takes a long time for your food to reach you. And it takes multiple hands, exchange of food through multiple hands and multiple processes, right? So what does this do to your food? Because of the longer time, the shelf life, there is a long time. So say, for example, if the vegetables have been harvested today, by the time you get it, it's about 2-3 days down in the life cycle of it. There's a complete loss of traceability. For example, there is a farmer growing organically, following, say, ZBNF practices, growing his produce organically. He's growing a variety of, say, Madanapalli tomatoes, which is a heirloom variety. But once it comes to the market, it gets into a pile of like a huge pile of tomatoes which are coming from all over the place, right? So there's a mix of cultivars, there's a mix of variety, there's a complete loss of data as to, is this organic, how was it grown, all of these factors that have gone into the production of this food. Of course, there's a lot of damage and wastage that is also associated with this whole life chain, right? So it's about, typically the damage is about 30 to 40%. So every step of this process is about 5% to 10% damage. So it adds up to at least about 30 to 40% of damage. So I'm now talking only about fresh, which is vegetables and fruits. Of course, the damage in cereals and grains are a lot lesser. But in fresh, you typically see a damage of about 40 to 40%. And it's also through the cycle, right? Because it's traveling across different districts. So because, for example, Kolar is known for the tomatoes. So you have stuff coming not just from Bangalore and the peri-urban farms around Bangalore, but you have stuff coming from Ooty, from Kolar, from Chikmagalur, from different belts where that crop is grown. So APMC typically sees produce coming in from other states as well. Whereas RMC, your regional market, see stuff coming from within Karnataka, but different districts. So that's how it works. So what does this do to your food, right? And then how does this, so why is it important to know where your food comes from? And does it really matter if it's coming from an organic farm, or it's coming from a chemical farm, or if it's a different variety? Why does this whole thing matter? The reason it matters is because when your food travels through this life cycle and it takes 2-3 days to come, the nutritional value also reduces, right? So nutritional value of vegetables and fruits reduces significantly when it takes too long. So every day you're seeing a loss of about 30% of nutritional value. So by the time it's reached you, it's at least about 40-50% loss of nutritional value that you're getting. So the fresher the food is, the better it is. That's a no-brainer, of course. And also, healthy soil, nutrient soil will produce healthier vegetables, right? Vegetables which are more packed with nutrition. And now what's happening is when you do not have traceability, you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know what was used to grow this food. And so we lose all this data that is connected to the food that we are eating. Heirloom varieties, which have superior flavors, which have higher nutrients, are mixed randomly with hybrid varieties. So all that data is getting lost here. Also, organic crops, there is, obviously, we know that organic is better than chemically grown food because of the pesticide content, because of the fertilizer content, chemical fertilizer content, which is there in this food. But also, organic crops contain significantly more vitamins and more minerals than crops that are grown in the normal intensive conventional way. So in locally grown foods also, the money is also going directly to the farmers, right? So because of these multiple intermediaries who are there in the process, the farmer ends up getting a much smaller share of this. Also because, no offense to the intermediary, because every time there is an exchange of hands, there is about 10% commission in the entire process. So the farmer ends up getting very less. So what does Farmizon do here? What we do is basically we are a farm to fork marketplace. We call ourselves that. So we have two types in which we typically operate. One is what we introduced, we founded Farmizon in 2017, Jan. So when we started off as a mini farm, with the concept of a mini farm. That's what we started off with. Now we of course have we have a catalog based ordering service also. And there how we work is that we work as a marketplace for farmers. That is, farmers can, connect with us, list their products with us, and we would tell you exactly which farm it is coming from, what's being used to grow that produce. And you would see the farmer's name, you would see the GPS location of their farm if you would want to go and visit there, and you would see reports of, when was the last soil test done, when was the last water test done, and what were the reports of these, right? And how these were grown. So the mini farms, just coming to the mini farms and how we started off, just to give you an idea about that. When we started off, we said, hey, it is possible to grow about 80% of what food a family would require in about a small plot of about 600 square feet. So we said, let's do this experiment where people could rent out farmlands. So sitting at home, say you do not have the time or the land, because we all stay in apartments. So you do not have the time or the resources or the knowledge, know how to grow your vegetables yourself. Then here's what you can do. You can rent out a mini farm in a bigger farm. So you would typically, each farm would be broken down into multiple of these smaller plots. You could rent out a farm, and through an app, you can decide what you want to grow. So for example, in the app, you'll be able to see a view which says you can grow carrots here, you can grow potatoes here, you can grow this, and you give those, you select what you want to grow. And the farmer also, they have an app where they can see what you've selected and they go ahead and plant those. And then every week your produce is getting harvested and you get a bag full of produce delivered to your home. So that's how we introduced the mini farm. And what we saw was that, good about 70 to 80% of a family's vegetable needs were sort of taken care of by the mini farm. Now this is for the hardcore guys who love farming, who love getting their hands dirty, and who want to go out there, visit the farm, take the family on a Sunday, do the planting themselves also if they wish to. So this model that we have is more for them, is for people who want to directly connect to them. Now, of course, after we launched, we saw a lot of interest in that. But we also saw a lot of people saying, hey, all I want is, my food is, I want to be sure that my food is organic, it's being grown safely. I might not have the time to invest in planning what to grow in my land, but I'm willing to sort of give that to you. And all I want is safe food, and food that I can trust, and food that is traceable at the end of the day. So that's when we launched our, the marketplace, or the tribes that we call it, Farmizon tribes that we call it. That's what we launched about just last year, end of last year is when we launched that. And we are active in about 500 plus apartment complexes, housing complexes now with tribes. So what are we solving here with this is that we solve the problem of discovery. Now, there are lots of farmers, lots of small farmers, especially in the lockdown, who have contacted apartment communities directly, right? And apartment communities are doing their bit in putting up Google Sheets, filling up, details of what farmer has what produce, and then getting that directly to their apartments. But then, can all farmers get on Facebook? Can they get on Twitter? Can they get on these mechanisms, or WhatsApp even, and try and sell their produce? No, there are lots of farmers who are unable to do that. So Farmizon solves that whole problem of discovery, because we go check these farms out, we go recruit these farmers into our fold, and we are checking on what produce they are growing, we are checking on all these things, and we are listing these with Farmizon. So the discovery part is getting solved to a large extent. And like we always said, we are connecting farmers to consumers, so we are able to do that better. Then, of course, the logistics. So there are two parts to logistics. One is, of course, your first mile delivery and your last mile delivery, right? So your last mile, which is in the city, which is what takes the most of the money. So typically every delivery to a customer is about 70 rupees to 80 rupees. And considering the cost of vegetables, many times it's not even proportionate to the cost of vegetables. So having a farmer to do all that and deal with the network, deal with the whole problem of going and supplying to each house is not a problem that he wants to take up, right? So that's something that we do. Also getting, getting these vegetables from their farms, getting into our farms, doing all of that. The first mile is also something that we take care of. The other thing is trust. Now, how do you trust these these farmers to know that they're really growing organically. Say a farmer gets in touch with you, says, I'm growing this organically, please buy this from me. I have 100 kgs of this, 50 kgs of this. So how do you trust that farmer? How do you know? So what we do is, as a company, we run due diligence checks. We go to the farm, we check these things. So we make sure we run soil tests, produce tests as well, lab tests, to see that the food is really organic. And of course, we have a very strong network of reference checks, also PGS certifications, all of that, right? So that trust is something that we are giving. Also, from a transaction end, you've connected with a farmer, you bought something, but then if you find out that it's rotten, you bought some apples, but then you find out that it's rotten, how do you deal with refunds and the transaction part of it? Many of them do not have a Google Pay even. So how do you deal with all of that? So Farmazon sort of solves that problem for you as well. And of course, traceability, because we are telling you exactly where it's coming from, unlike other other sellers that you have. So you have that traceability of where it's coming from, and it's really grown using all of this. So that happens. A large part of what we do is also farmer branding. Right now, if you had to think of your off the hat of how many Indian farmers do you know that have a brand of their own, or how many farmers do you know by name, that hey, Ramaduta Farms, or like a Singh apple orchard? There are very few. You can count on your fingertips, right? But this is what we are trying to do, that give a branding to each farmer, make them micro entrepreneurs, make their produce be known. So if, for example, Kalsekar's farm in Ratnagiri is having amazing Hapus mangoes, then that would be what comes onto our app. That would be the story that we would talk about, and that branding then makes it great for the farmer, right? Because people, not only through Farmazon but otherwise, also get to know him and get to know the amazing fruits that he's growing and all of that. That branding is essential, and people are willing to pay a little extra for that brand then. So that's what we in a nutshell do at Farmazon. Of course, so this talks a little bit about what we do at Farmazon. On the right hand side, you see a catalog. So it's typically like a supermarket catalog where you can add items. It's just that when you click on each item, you know where it's coming from. So that information is something that you're getting. Also, we are also integrating a little backward integration with farmers as to what they should be growing, right? And what they should be planning. Because we are connecting farmers and consumers directly. We are also getting feedback from consumers on, hey, I know you're giving me arbi, but I really want arbi leaves. Where do I get them? I've searched in the market everywhere, but I'm not finding arbi leaves, and I want to make that patrodi, right? Or I want turmeric leaves, or I want pumpkin flowers. A lot of Bengalis are asking us for pumpkin flowers. So that data doesn't flow into that stream to farmers, unfortunately. And that's what we are trying to do, because here we are talking to both. So we get that information from our customers, and we are flowing it back to the farmers. And then they start saying, okay, fine, I have to grow turmeric now. I have to grow turmeric leaves now, or I have to harvest aloe vera and send now, or colocasia and send now, right? So that's happening. So we are doing a lot of backward integration of what they should be growing, how they should be planning the production. Also, not doing monoculture and monocropping and saying I'm just going to grow corn or tomatoes, but saying, hey, you're better off growing 5 things, because your risk is then distributed. Plus your soil also improves, because you're doing you're growing multiple varieties of crops. We also give them practices, what they should be doing. We train them on organic practices. So a lot of which is missing, right? So agricultural universities typically, if you go and look at an agricultural university syllabus of of a BA Agri, you would see that there's very, very little devoted to organic farming. There's just about a chapter or 2 devoted to organic farming. So people out there are unable to get information about organic practices and how they should grow it, right? So we help farmers with that as well. So these are some pictures from our farms and the produce that our Farmazons are getting. So we have vegetable bundles, we have other things. And also we look at cultivating rare varieties or heirloom varieties. We focus on that. Nati varieties which are lost now, which farmers, some of the farmers have preserved, and we do a lot of seed saving there, sharing of those practices. Say we hardly find pink radishes in the market, or the elephant tusk okra, which is really long but very tender. So we do that so that we have a wide variety and flavorful food that goes back to our customers, right? Though we talked about the app and it all looks very simple on the outside, that there's an app, behind that is a very complex mechanism where we are collecting a lot of big data to see the kind of pest infections that's happening, to see the germination rates. So all this data is being collected into the Farmers Brain from different farms. So we're collecting data as to how much time it took to germinate this okra in this season versus in, say, winter, or how much time, what kind of pests have been attacking the cabbages this year compared to last year same time. So this data, which is amazing and hasn't really been captured or is not readily available, at least as far as we know, is now trying to be captured and is now then going back to the farmers. And this data, this feedback is what we are giving the farmers, right? So that they can tweak their growing processes that way. Forgotten foods. So we rarely see jamuns, we rarely see passion fruit, muti param. In fact, many of these I didn't know also, until we had these fruits coming in from different places. We didn't know that, oh, these existed. And the reason why they are not there or not easily found in our supermarkets is because it perishes very fast, high perishability. By the time it passes through those 4-5 intermediaries, it's gone. So very less shelf life, right? Also, the demand for this is also not known many times. So what we are trying to do is, because there is not, there is not much gap between the farmer and the consumer here, we are able to get the produce directly from the farms and send it out the same day or just the very next day. So we are able to get these forgotten fruits and source forgotten vegetables, right? Things like turkey berry, things like fiddle leaf fern, things like that, which we used to eat when we were kids, or our grandmothers used to make. These things are like forgotten these days. So these are things that we get. And all our greens is fresh, is plucked on the same day. Most of our vegetables is harvested same day or the evening prior to when we are delivering it. So there's really less time and wastage also that happens. Our wastage is about 5% to 10%, because we know exactly how many orders we have. So we exactly deliver that. So there's hardly any wastage that goes in. We also are able to give back more to the farmer, because we do not have too many levels of this. We are able to give farmer a bigger pie, of a bigger share of the entire pie. So we're able to give them at least about 70% of what the consumer pays us. So that's great for the farmers. And also, like I said, we list a lot of these things like greens, forage greens, things like balloon vine, Mudakatan kirai, otherwise it's called. These are, we rarely get these I've never seen them, at least in our local markets, or you would get them very rarely, and you would have to tell that person that, source this for me or something. So these are readily available, and these greens are, there is a certain, certain greens that you have to eat in this season, because say it's the winter weather, you have to eat these to make your immune system better. And all of this was there. This was passed on from our grandmothers, but we've just forgotten about it. So Farmazon does this, that we source these things or tell our farmers to grow these and then supply it back to our consumers, right? So this is mostly what we are doing here. I think I'm at the end of my slides, but this is mostly what I wanted to talk to you about today. Yeah, so that's what we are doing mainly, guys, here. And the tribes also is working very effectively in the sense that we are attacking, or we are targeting communities, right? Or targeting villa communities or apartment communities. So our delivery costs also, our last mile delivery costs are reduced a lot, because we have about 50 to 100 consumers or customers in each apartment complex. So then it becomes easier for us to deliver to these communities. And then we have a tribes leader at every community, who then spreads the info about it, who comes to our farms, does a physical check, because consumers trust other consumers, right? So you would rather trust your neighbor than some company. So a neighbor's coming to our farms, checking out there, then going and spreading the word has a lot of bearing, as opposed to a company doing it. So yeah, so over to you, Anusha.
Great. Thank you so much, Gitanjali, for that, and for telling us a little bit more about what you do at Farmazin. I had a question about some of the forgotten foods and the forage greens that you spoke about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, on the discovery of those for us, or like even the awareness of those, is not going to be as common as it is for other types of vegetables. So how do you solve that purpose? Like, do you also see the education part of it for a company like Farmazin coming into the picture for this?
Yes. So yes, there are different types of, so we do a lot of awareness programs and a lot of posts in social media about what these greens are. We also do a lot of R&D on our end, because there a lot of greens are specific to regions, right? Say if you're from Kerala, there would be a standard set of roots, tubers, greens that you have grown up eating. So it is very region specific, and we try to look into each region and see what were those foods that we've forgotten, what our grandmas used to eat. So we bring that, we research on those things, and then and it's difficult to find seeds for them. It's impossible to get seeds for them, because they're just not available in the market. Nobody is growing them. So it is basically by plant propagation, it's basically by seed saving. Very few people are saving these seeds, and then we tell our farmers to grow these instead, right? So that's typically what we do. So there's a lot of R&D work that's involved in, first of all, identifying it at our end itself. And then we also get a lot of feedback from customers saying, hey, I see you have all these greens, but can you source this fiddle leaf fern? And I used to, as a child, eat them when I was in Chikmagalur or in Coorg. And can you source this for us? And then we start the process of looking for a farmer who has this, or tell one of our farmers, hey, why don't you grow this for us? So all that happens. And of course, a lot of social media posts of, what is this exactly about, how to cook it. We have recipes. So at Farmazin, we shoot a lot of recipes. We shoot a lot of videos on how you can use something like that. Like, so for example, bamboo stalks. How can you use bamboo stalks? What can you make out of it? So these are things that we do. Recipes are things that we make, give to our customers. So a lot of work goes into all of that, into customer education as well.
Okay, thank you. So Ambali has a question, and also I guess a little bit of customer feedback. She's been associated with a mini farm at Farmazin, and it was a lovely experience for over a year.
Okay.
Commendable idea, but we couldn't continue due to lack of time, and we usually would end up getting only greens as produce, which may not be the issue with us not giving time to the farm, and also the farmer who was not a traditional organic farmer. My question is, do we have any kind of organic certification by any government agency, or is this an offering?
Okay, great, Ambali. Thank you. It's great to know that you were a customer. You should try our tribes, which is a lot more, what do you say? It's a lot more predictable, in the sense that a mini farm is very unpredictable, because you would have chosen, say, 12 varieties, right? Or 10 varieties, or whatever it is that you've chosen to plant in each of your beds. Now, if you want capsicum tomorrow, you can't readily get capsicum tomorrow, because you should have planted it 3 months back. So it's something like that. So it is more like an extension of your own kitchen garden at home. It's more like that, and it's more for people who have the time to really choose and grow what they want to grow. So yes, you're right there that a lot of times it's just greens that you're getting and not more of vegetables. you end up doing that. Or if you have a harvest, then you're getting all your cabbages at once, right? Or all your cauliflowers at once. So in order to tackle that and increase predictability and have a better experience for our customers, that's why we introduced tribes, and there we are sort of sourcing things from these different farmers and then giving it to you. So it's like a catalog where you can just go and order. Now, your question about do we have any kind of organic certification? So all the produce that we sell on Farmazon is organic, has been grown organically. The produce that is listed as organic specifically has organic certification also. That is, the farmers have organic certification. There is produce that is listed as natural, and there's no organic tag to it. And these are typically organically grown, but they do not have a certification yet. Organic certification takes time. There is a certain process to it. Your farm has to be pesticide free for about 3 years. There are some criteria, and there's some amount of formality and some amount of documentation and all that goes into it. We're trying to get PGS certifications for all our farmers. So that's something like a group certification where a farmer certifies another farmer, something like that. So they get into a group and certify each other and go visit their farms. So that's more like a reference certification that's there. So yes, some of us, to answer your question, some of our farmers have, some don't, but all of them are naturally grown produce.
Great. So the next question is from Elizabeth, which is, what is the role of technology in creating a more inclusive food system?
So now, if we had to scale, say for example, we had to go back and look at when we started Farmazon, and we started it just with one farm, and we were having these, there were community farms before us. We were not the first ones to have a rent-a-farm model. There were community farms before us as well. But the whole thing with Farmazon was that we knew from day one that we wanted to scale it and we wanted to bring it to a larger audience. And the only way you can scale it is by using technology to your advantage, right? So if we didn't have an app, if we didn't have basically these instructions that customers are giving somehow flow back very systematically to the farmer, if we did not have that, then it just would get very difficult for the farmer to manage as well as the customer to get those expectations, right? So technology was very, very key to our entire, functioning. Also, technology is technology from very small thing of, just WhatsApp also. Now since all our farmers have WhatsApp or their kids have WhatsApp, it's really easy for us to interact with them, get pictures of their farm, do videos even of their farm, do Facebook lives, Insta lives with them from their farms, show customers their produce. So all this has helped immensely to bridge that gap. Now the farmer is just very he's not even though he's sitting somewhere in Nasik, is actually a lot more closer. You're able to see his farm, able to know what his produce is. And all this has been made easy only by technology. So, and because, why is it inclusive? Because any farmer can then access it, right? You do not have to be a big farmer owning, say, 100 acres to be able to get access to a premium set of customers. Here, any farmer, even with half an acre, can get access if he's growing, say, a certain set of forage greens or something else, right? Which is very unique. Yeah, hope that answers. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So one question is, can you share with us some notes from a farmer's perspective of adapting and working with Farmazon's tech platform?
So initially, it's interesting actually. Initially, we thought that farmers would have a big problem, navigating through the app, understanding all of this. We tried to make it very, very icon, very like watering would have a watering can and a weeding would have a. So we tried to make it as simple as that. But then initially we had a lot of doubts about how can farmers adapt to this. But then because of this whole penetration of technology that's happened, of smartphones that's happened, our farmers learned it in about 2 days, 1 or 2 days, they were up and running, and they would start suggesting us how we could make our app better or make it more user friendly, right? So we did taken a lot of that inputs and that feedback and did put that back into our app. So the farmers, from a tech point of view, adapting and working, that wasn't a problem. They took very less time in doing that. You had another question, right? So yeah. So
I
from a
think it was
farmer,
mostly about the
I think it was
experience.
mostly the experience of adapting to that. So also I see. Okay, yeah, go on. Anisha.
Yeah. So this is from YouTube. How does Farmazon deal with new customer vegetable preferences with respect to the first delivery? That is, greens grow faster when compared to other vegetables.
Very good question. So yes, so that's, and we make no bones about it. We tell customers that, listen, this is like I said, an extension of your home garden. So if you've gone and planted greens in your home garden, today you made a nice new kitchen garden bed, you planted greens, you planted radishes, you planted cabbages, you're going to start getting your greens first, right? And then you would, after a month and a half, start getting your radishes. Then after 3 months, you would get your cabbages and cauliflowers. So that's typically how it works. And that's how it works for our customers as well. And we tell them that it would take about 4 weeks for you to start getting your first harvest. But once you're in, and once your vegetable starts coming in a cycle, one cycle is over, then you have a constant supply. And also another thing we do is, we started doing when we started out itself, we had a common area that was in which we would grow vegetables. The farmer would grow vegetables in a common area to be distributed to all the customers. So we would grow things like curry leaves and raw papaya and things like that, which everyone can't plant one curry leaf in their own plot. It'll just become too much. So we used to plant common vegetables in the common area, which could be distributed then to everyone. That was another thing. And then as we started bettering our model, we also did the half and half model, where half is controlled by the farmer and half is controlled by the customer, where half, he has his set of things that he's growing, but then customers get stuff from day one in that model, in the second model, because the farmer is already growing something in that half, in the other half. So right from day one, we start getting vegetables in the second model, in the better version.
Okay. So Anand has to say that he really appreciates that the farmers are given a bigger part of the pie, and he'll definitely give Farmazon a shot. So his question is about, how is the price decided for the produce? Is it by referring the current market value, or is there any other cost analysis that goes behind it? Like, do the farmers also have a hand in deciding the price for their produce?
The farmers decide the price. The farmers come up with the price. We don't set the price for the farmers because we feel that the farmer understands his production costs, the cost that he's put into doing this, and his value, the time that he spent in it, the amount for that. So we let the farmers decide the price and come up with that. And of course, we'll give that feedback to the farmers, saying if it's too high than what we see in the market, in other organic produce, if we see that it's not comparative or it's too high, then we give that feedback back, saying maybe you should peg it at this because this is what it is. But we take the farmer's price. Then on top of that, we add our delivery costs, whatever, quality checks and grading and all of that. There's a small percentage of wastage which goes out. So we add that, plus whatever is our commission on it, and then then that's the final price that is available to the consumers. That's there. So that's how we mostly work. We also at times, there are farmers who do not know. They've just grown the produce, they do not know, and they are not able to come up with a price. Then in that case, we refer to Hopcom's prices now, but you have to understand that Hopcom's is for inorganic produce, right? Like conventionally grown produce. So on top of Hopcom's price, we put a 30% markup, because this is organic and it is more expensive and it takes more resources and energy and all of that, more labor to produce it. So we put a 30% markup and tell the farmer that this is something that they could go by as a guideline, more as a guideline.
Okay. And Ambali has a question about heirloom seeds. So our first talk was with Dr. Prabhakar Rao from Haryali Seeds. So she wants to know, have you connected with such seed keepers like Haryali Seeds?
Yeah. So I think we bought in from Haryali Seeds as well in the past, and we have connected with other seed keepers as well. Like Sahaja Seeds is one, which is in Mysore. They do a lot of heirloom seeds. There's Nimai Gardens. They do a lot of heirloom as well. Nimai also goes to different parts of India, collects heirloom and comes. Then we've connected with Auroville, Buddha Garden, Pebble Garden. They do a lot of heirloom as well. So we've connected with farmers in also different states, because each state has a different cultivar, different variety, like multiple, like hundreds of different varieties, right? So we connect with them and get that as well. And then we encourage our farmers to say, if you've got a variety of a round bottle gourd from West Bengal, then we tell our farmers to save it, save the best one, teach them seed saving practices, then use the same seeds for their next batch, stuff like that. So we give them that training as well.
Great. And there's another question about customer churn, which is what happens to the vegetables and greens planted for a customer, but then he or she decides to leave the platform?
So another customer, there is customer churn that happens, for whatever reasons. So the same plot is up for any other customer to then come in. So they start getting in the produce from day one then. So if we have another customer coming in, they get the produce on the first week itself. They can see what things are growing on the farm already. And if they don't like a particular vegetable, they can say that, please clear this vegetable, plant something else for us. So that's typically how it works.
Okay. And how has the affinity generally to technology been in a city like Bangalore versus to other cities that you already have presence in or are planning to expand to?
So we are in Hyderabad as well. Bangalore market is very, very knowledgeable, right? People are knowledgeable. They know about, their awareness levels are very high. They know about organic. They've already connected to many farmers in the sense that there is a connect to farmers. They have been to local farmer markets. There is that awareness. So we didn't have to, start from scratch teaching our customers what organic produces, which we have to do in other cities, I think, because largely that level of awareness is not there. Also because in Bangalore, there's a lot of app usage of, like a Swiggy or a Zomato. People are very, very accustomed to all of that. So that we see that in Hyderabad, that there is that little bit of difference. I wouldn't say it's a large difference. Hyderabad is also a much really evolved market that way. But we see that difference of adaptability to saying, oh, you have an app, okay, I'll just download it and order, versus, hey, can you take my order on WhatsApp, or can I call you and place the order? That is what we would see in other cities. And we would have to plan something for that as well, for the customers who are unable to order online, who say, I'd rather just call you and tell you the order. So we might have something for them as well. Soon, but in Bangalore we've not faced those problems. It's been super. Things which are very complex for us, things like team buy, right? So we introduced something called team buy, and where we said that it's like a group buy thing, where we said that say we are getting 2 tons of mangoes, or this specific variety of mango that is coming from this place, say Punarnava mangoes, and we have this. And if you do a team buy, like right now each kg is about say $200, but if you do a team buy, then it comes to you for 150 or 120 or whatever it is. Then and those things have exploded. Like things have got sold, about 2 tons of stuff has got sold in under an hour. And so that kind of virality which is there in Bangalore is just amazing.
Thank you so much, Gitanjali, for joining us and for patiently answering all the questions that we got. And thanks everybody else for tuning into this session.